Ratchet& Clank Into the Nexus is probably a game that I would consider to be rather mixed in nature. Nothing about the 5-hour game really stands out to me in a spectacular fashion. As a matter of fact, when I was done with the game, all I could do was put it aside and say, Into the Nexus is supposed to serve as an epilogue to the future trilogy. The other three previous games being Tools of Destruction, Quest for Booty, and A Crack in Time. However, unlike these predecessors, the game mainly feels as if it falls flat on its face. Some of these include writing issues, while the game also carries the weight of being too clunky in its execution as well. The story of Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus centers around Ratchet & Clank needing to stop Vendra Prague from unleashing the specimen known as the Nethers. The reason that she wants to regroup the Nethers is so that she can be together again with her own race. Apparently, there is some kind of danger that occurs if the Nethers are released into the galaxy, but I never found a good explanation as to why Mr. I, the being that Vendra wants to release, was posing as a threat. More so, I couldn't figure out his plan. Also, Vendra comes across as a generic character as well, as one with too much filler exposition. Throughout the Second World, we'll come across these diary packs that have Vendra talking about her past. These are actually very interesting in the way they explain her backstory, and it does seem to step away from the generic flashback cliche. At the same time, Vendra's seat as the big bad is taken away as soon as she gets captured by Mr. I, which happens by the second planet. That's another thing about Into the Nexus. The game lasts for only 5 hours. Of course, I'm very much aware that a lot of people complain about these kinds of things, but it really does hamper in a lot of the game's quality. Vendra could have genuinely been a sympathetic villain if she was given time to flesh out. Tal and Apogee could have had more character development, but instead, her arc feels like it was pushed aside. None of these characters feel like they are fleshed out because there was only so much you could add within this game. Instead, most of the game feels as if it focuses on Vendra, a character that has no relation with any of the other pre-existing villains in the Ratchet & Clank universe. See, I'll give certain enemies some credit in the sense that I felt like there was some connection with the previous antagonist. Talican had this with Ratchet when he was killed his entire species, but here, Vendra is just a character that feels very shoehorned in. Her brother does a lot of exposition on Vendra's past. It kind of felt like he was a nothing character, just someone that Vendra kicked around for him to do her bidding. Vendra sounds like someone that could have been sympathetic had there been more time to flesh her out. Luckily, Into the Nexus makes up for that shoddy story with the gameplay. The gameplay is the same Ratchet & Clank, with some oddball styles to mix things up. There's a lot of running and gunning with numerous weapons to mix things up. I never found myself getting too bored. The levels have also opened up, leaving there to be a lot of room to explore for gold bolts and Rhino 7 holoplans. The only issue that I had with Into the Nexus in terms of gameplay is that the shooting feels janky, with the game now running at 30 frames per second. Also, the strafing mechanic works a little bit differently now. Despite all this, it is still the same Ratchet & Clank you remember. Of course, Insomniac felt like they needed to add a couple new tweaks. Some of these include the Clank sections within the Nether regions. These are interesting because you can shift the gravity in order to solve puzzles and reach areas that are otherwise inaccessible. To sum it all up, Into the Nexus may not be a full package when it comes to Ratchet & Clank, but it sure as hell is a fun game that was able to keep me entertained for the whole way through. I especially really enjoyed the final boss of the game. It felt very cumulative in the sense I felt like I was enjoying myself throughout the game. That being said, I wouldn't say that Into the Nexus is a game that is very memorable. There is a challenge mode if you choose to pick it up again. I guess if you decide to do so, but for the most part I felt like quite a bit of the game is compressed for a short length. And that was Into the Nexus. A rather short but sweet Ratchet & Clank game, and maybe one I would appreciate going back to from time to again. But there's something about Into the Nexus that feels rushed, like nobody cared. And it just leaves me scratching my head asking, was this really necessary?